I'm Seth Michael May.
I'm Sean Behrens. I'm Abram Kaplan.
And I'm Judy Mayer.
And you're listening to Obscuria Filmcast.
Greetings and welcome to Obscuria Filmcast. I'm your host, Abram Kaplan, and we will be joined momentarily by Sean, Seth, and Judy. Today we will be discussing the film Freak Out, 2015, directed by Boaz Armoni, written by Lior Lederman, and starring Itai Zvolon, Kai Korabelnikov, and Asaf Ben Shimon. An Israeli soldier sets off for a week of patrolling with his unit, and it's not long before strange and frightening things begin to happen to all the soldiers, and they start to question whether they will come out of this experience alive. If you like a good slasher film that milks its low budget for every morsel of entertainment imaginable, Freak Out will not disappoint. Packed with dark humor, biting political and social satire, and surreal Kafkaesque nightmarishness, Freak Out is a horror flick that punches way above its indie film weight class. Freak Out is available to stream on the Tubi and Izzy platforms, and is available for rental or purchase on Apple TV and Vudu. If you enjoy our podcast, please subscribe to us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Leave a like and comment on one of our YouTube streams, and share a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We appreciate all of your support and welcome your engagement on our weekly YouTube live streams. If you would like to suggest a film for future episodes and have the opportunity to participate in our live stream, please email us at obscuriafilmpodcast@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you. And now, here is our live discussion with Sean, Seth, and Judy. We're live.
Hello.
All right, so we are talking about the film that I selected today called Freak Out, which came out in 2015. It's an Israeli comedy horror film. And, well, this is the first foreign language film that we've chosen for this program. And I'm currently in the process of learning Hebrew, so I've been watching a lot of Israeli cinema and television, which I find to be very interesting. It's been a lot of American television series that people think are American are actually based on Israeli TV shows. Like, for example, like really big ones like Homeland. A lot of people don't realize Homeland is based on an Israeli, is written by an Israeli writer. In Treatment. In Treatment was an Israeli program.
Wow.
There's a lot of examples of this, and Israeli writers and directors are infiltrating Hollywood left and right. I think that this film is like a super independent film. I don't know that much about the director and the writer. They're kind of like I don't know.
This is the only thing the writer has.
This is the only credits that the writer has. The director's done a bunch of stuff. Boaz Armoni. Shout out to Boaz Armoni and Lior Lederman. I really enjoyed this film. I saw it because I subscribed to an Israeli streaming site that had this film featured on it, and I was like, this looks cool. I'll watch Israeli comedy horror, and I just thought the writing was really funny, really clever, and I thought this is a great example of a film that packs a whole lot of story and into milks like a simple theme for a lot of story, has really good dialogue, was really funny, and uses typical horror low budget special effects really well. And again, this is coming from a guy that's not a big horror guy, but I enjoyed this movie, I think, more than I typically would a horror film, just because I thought it was like really hilarious and satirical, and I enjoyed a lot of the like what I thought was kind of like these sort of over the top cultural commentary. There was a lot of like I put in the description for this film, I thought it was very like Kafkaesque and sort of dealing with like identity and like people's place in the world, and feeling like sort of kind of the whole feeling of isolation and not fitting in and being like an outsider. And I think
also
the
like, comedy, Kafka's hysterical. He
I agree.
A lot of comedies.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I think pretty much everything Kafka did was comedy, and to Sean's point, I think a lot of people don't appreciate. People always talk about Kafka being dark and depressing, and I think people fail to realize that he was taking a piss out of, like, what he thought was almost sort of just like he was making fun of society. I thought of him more as like a satirist than anything. Anyway, I thought this was a really great like satirical film as well. So
actually, one of Kafka's favorite jokes was that one of his best jokes was somebody says there is no hope, but then somebody else says no, there is hope, just not for us. and that's a Kafka joke, and that is like this movie because I guess Matan, what's his name? The main character's name is Matan. Yeah, Matan. Mm-hmm. He has this relationship with his mother, and I get it. And when you're Israeli, you're volunteered for war, and you're in the military. Maybe not war, but you're in the military.
Yeah, it's compulsory.
Compulsory,
yeah. And he's like, he's like a nerdy, like he's a nerdy desk jockey guy. Like he didn't do any combat in the military, and he's thrown into this scene. It's basically reservist duty. He's going in to do this weekend shift, basically, that nobody wants to do. He doesn't want to do it, and the other guys don't want to do it, and the other guys are like seasoned.
And they're all friends.
They're all friends, and they're all from the same military, like combat unit. This kid is not from any combat unit. He's got like a desk job.
I think this was his first gig. Yeah, his first gig.
This is his first. This is his first experience with. This is just. Well, I mean, they make jokes about it. He's like, well, you did learn how to shoot a gun in your basic training, right? But this is his first active duty situation where he's actually got to be like, whatever. And so he's nervous just because he doesn't know where he's going. And he's basically, the film starts with him on the bus heading towards, driving through an Arab village before they pick up the other soldiers.
Talking to his mother.
And he's texting with his mom. He doesn't know what's going on. He's worried. He's confused. And, then these other guys come on the bus and they're all joking around and shooting the shit and being very macho. And, and he's just sort of like, what the hell am I in for? And then they get to the base and they're all like super freaked out. I mean, he's super freaked out. They're fine.
Wait, before they get to the base. They stop at a Arab restaurant in this village.
And these guys are Israeli. And they're just fucking playing pranks on this kid, Matan. Like, he's really nervous. They're treating the Arab staff at the restaurant like really badly. They're being really rude to them. Disrespectful. And Matan is like calling them out, being like, "Come on, man! Like, why are you doing that? They're gonna,
Doesn't he think they're gonna hunt them down?
Well, he starts getting freaked out that like these guys are going to go after him because the guys ended up skipping out on the check and like leaving him there. And then the bus starts driving off and then he like runs out of there. They're just pranking him left and right, and there's one scene when they finally get to the base where he's like, "What's the matter with you guys? Those guys are going to come after us. They could try to hurt us." He's like, "Let me ask you something. What if you ran out of a check in Tel Aviv? If you left at a restaurant, you think that you would be afraid that the restaurant owner would come and try to kill you because you ran out on a check?" It's like, that's racist, don't you think? Do you think these Arabs are so fucked up, that they're going to come and try to kill you because you skipped out on a check? Like, and it's just kind of funny
They
because
might.
it deals. Because what they're sort of doing is they're kind of like taking a jab at the liberal elite. Like there's like a sort of liberal elite bubble in Tel Aviv of people that don't really like, they have all of these like liberal ideas about Palestinians and Arab population and this and that, but they don't actually interact or deal with them on any level. So it's sort of like they have this weird fetishization, like almost kind of like this fantasy about them, whether they like are trying to portray them as these innocent poor victims or they're trying to portray them as these like demonic, you know, yes, Sean, they do very much like soccer. Like everyone else in the world loves soccer. Every culture on planet Earth loves soccer. So yes, Israelis.
I tapped something in the chat.
Yeah, I see it. No, so it's kind of just like funny because they're sort of making fun of like liberal elites with like on some level, I think, with that.
Also, those three guys were extremely annoying the whole time. I guess they could have been funny, but I really wanted Matan to take a baseball bat to their face, all of them. I wish, I mean, that would have been great for me if that was the direction the movie would have went in. It did not, but those guys were getting really annoying. But I will say this. I really did like the dialogue. Whoever they cast was perfect. Everybody was perfect. And they had this, and the way they did this story is that they had a watchtower. And even when the sergeant was there, well, when the guys get there, there's two soldiers who were women, and they were chit-chatting there and stuff and whatever else, and they were saying they're going to change the sergeants, and the new sergeant is there, and the new sergeant was saying, if you look to the right, there's nothing in the shape of mountains. If you look to the left, there's nada in the shape of nothing, and there's just nothing.
And that was actually a brilliant literary device, because in Hebrew, there's two ways of saying nothing.
Really?
Yeah. And so, like, it was translated, like, you can say klum, which means nothing, like as one word, or you can say shum davar, which literally means no thing. So those are two different ways of saying the same thing.
So it's like me saying
it was kind of a brilliant, yes, it was like a brilliant literary device that he actually, that's funny that you mentioned that, because that line really stuck with me.
It was a good line, yeah.
Yeah.
I just always like that, because that watchtower became the narrative device for the movie, because they all have to stand guard in certain shifts, but the three jerks do it in such a way where they make Matan and take advantage of his kindness, so he's standing guard this whole time. And and Matan sent a message out to his mother for his mother to call the lieutenant back at base, so the lieutenant could get him out of this week-long duty of being in the watchtower. So Matan has to like stand guard duty, but they're waiting for a phone call and all this other stuff. And one of the jerks is upset that his girlfriend had a picture on Facebook.
Well, that also, it should be understood, like, by the audience, they keep pressuring Matan into taking on all of the responsibility.
Yeah, I was like, Matan, do something.
Yeah, they're basically turning him into a chump, and then
I had to take a break. But
yeah, I don't know.
Watching it.
Does anybody else want to go in on the narrative a little bit, rather than me just try to tell the whole story?
I think the thing that I really liked about this is, I mean, I've only seen one other modern military Israeli film, and it's the cartoon Waltzing Bashir.
Oh, yeah.
The thing that I got from that is you don't really see it in American films very much, except to say, oh, these are kids. But we sent out these kids. But the thing in Waltzing Bashir and in this one is they're teenagers. They're like at the height of when you think you might be an adult, but you're an asshole. Like you have, you're in college. You're in college. Like, get out of the way. I'll open the soda.
I know everything.
I'll show you the way to the refrigerator, young lady. Like that's the age that you're at, and they really capture that. And I also think it's like it can't just be in Bashir and in this. It must be part of the whole culture because everyone, what is 17, 18 goes in, right?
Yeah. Military service is compulsory. Now that doesn't mean everybody's ends up in combat.
Right.
But there's a lot of, and less, more and more people are ending up in other kinds of military specializations because the Israeli military is becoming increasingly more and more specialized as time goes on because it's a regional superpower now. But you see what you see in this film, I think, is a lot of like the internal conflict, not just. I think one of the statements, I don't know if they're actually trying to make this statement or not, but to me it seemed like, whether it's conscious or not, it's there, that there's this sort of, particularly on the part of the public, like outside of Israel, there's this perception that you have Israelis who are Jews, and they are struggling in this sort of existential battle with their Arab counterparts within Israel and in the territories surrounding Israel. When in reality, like there's so much internal conflict in Jewish society, within the Jewish state, that is so much more complicated in a lot of ways than the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians. So yes, because first of all, you have like, and this is sort of like a more subtle theme, is you have the kind of like Ashkenazi Mizrahi tension. Like when they're in the restaurant, the religious guy who's like got the darker hair, the darker complexion.
Mm-hmm.
He's making all these comments about, well, if I was a blonde Ashkenazi, I would have been able to get a job working in computers as well, and or whatever, which it's sort of an outdated kind of thing, but like there was a little bit of that, like, well, you're from this different culture, and like you were able to skip the line ahead of me. I'm a very good with computers, whatever, but I'm also not a pussy, and so I joined the tank brigade or whatever. And then you have with the character we haven't mentioned yet, which is the what was his title? The sergeant.
Is that the sergeant? Yeah.
Yeah. The guy who's basically the base commander, who's like this kind of weird, nerdy guy. He's Russian, right? So I don't know, like a lot of people don't know this, but there's about, in the last 40 years or so, about 1 million Russians emigrated to Israel.
1 million?
About 1 million, yeah. So that's about 1/6 of Israel.
But Israel is like smaller than New Jersey, isn't it?
Are you talking about the population, or are you talking about
like
the
land
mass?
size?
The land mass is about the same as New Jersey. Wow. And the Jewish population in Israel is about 7 million. The Arab population in Israel is about 2.5 million. And then the Palestinian population, the Arab population in the disputed territories is another couple of million.
Jesus.
So basically, like, you have 1 million Russians coming in over the course of the last several decades. And many of these Russians aren't technically Jewish, or they are, but like in order to be considered like halakhically, legally Jewish, you have to have, your mother has to be a Jew. So if your mother's 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 mother is a Jew, then you're a Jew. But if your mother's mother was Christian, like if your mother's mother was a
Goyim,
let's say you're a Russian guy let's say you're from Russia, and your mother's mother was Orthodox Christian, and your mother's father and your father's parents were both Jewish. You're 3/4 Jewish. You're technically not Jewish by Jewish law. But the law of return in Israel says that if you have they use the same standard that the Nazis used, which was if you had one Jewish grandparent and you were affiliated with the Jewish community in any way, or you identified as a Jew and you had one Jewish grandparent, you were considered a Jew and you would be shipped off to a concentration camp. So the Israeli state adopted the same standard. So that's
what I thought.
Anybody who has 1/4 Jewish blood can become an Israeli citizen and gradually, actually, in many cases, assimilate to Jewish society as well. So there's a lot of like you have a lot of like in the the Russian community. There's a lot of tension, and there's a lot of sense of there's a lot of identity issues and a sense of like not being treated or considered to be fully Jewish or on the same level. And so I think some of the fact that they chose the psycho guy to be this Russian guy who clearly like had some kind of a difficult past and ended up in Israel
because
he
he
didn't have
said
family. He talks
because
about
he said
how
he doesn't have a home to go back
he
to.
doesn't have a home to go back to, and this is a theme that like Jewish people are supposed to relate to in general, because like this has been a problem for the Jewish people for so much of history. But his character in particular is interesting because he's like supposed to be like this weirdo freak, and they're making fun of his Russian music and all this stuff, and it's not like and so I think that's kind of an interesting theme there too, is that like he's dealing with this sort of outsider status, and it's like the one thing that he can cling to is his connection to the base that he's been protecting. And
he also, now what we haven't mentioned yet is the radio waves, or so they're there at the base to protect this tower, that you're not supposed to be able to stay there for more than a week or two at a time. Like, so he's saying he rotates with someone else. I don't know. My mind was going logistically.
Yeah,
like
maybe he
who's
lost
the commander that doesn't notice the guy's not leaving.
Right. Well, we don't find out until later that the other commander he did something to him.
Okay.
Right? Like isn't that kind of.
I don't know. I thought it was.
Well, he kills the
so
dog.
for the audience member, this is spoiler. This totally we're in spoiler alert.
We're in spoiler,
completely.
but yeah, he kills in the beginning. They had a contextual. Before the credits, there's this weird POV scene with a dog, and the dog's barking. Then you hear the dog whimper. Then you hear the dog getting killed, and then you're into the movie. And during that, you see like a bunker. So, and then when the guys show up to the base, you see the bunker, and the sergeant says, "Don't go in that bunker, no matter what happens." So there's something about the bunker, and then the movie happens. So, the bunker's there, but then the movie happens, you kind of forget about it. But every horror movie has a element of an investigation. And then those three guys, those four guys with the three, and then Matan, they get together somewhere in the end of Act 2 against the sergeant, because they're like, this stuff doesn't add up. There's no other sergeant. You've been here this whole time. We went in your room and all this other stuff. And I think that really carries the movie through, because it's a very slow build, which is cool if it's paced well. And they did pace it very, very
I think
well.
the reason the pacing worked so well is because you had like all these pranks. Like it's basically like one prank after another with the other soldiers, and then like they kind of they pressure and coerce the sergeant into like leaving the base to go party and make him stay, and they basically pull this massive prank on him there. And then
what do they call when they wrap up the things? What are they? Say it again. Keffia.
The
wrap
type
up
of
their
shawl that the Palestinians wear. It's called the keffia. Yeah.
Keffia.
Yeah.
And go ahead. Yeah.
They dress up like they basically try to spook the hell out of them. They leave the base, they come back, and they basically dress up like Arabs, trying to scare him and make him think that they're infiltrating the base. And then they take off their masks, and they start laughing. And
they laugh
out.
And my man Matan got in all their faces, and he had a great monologue. Whoever that actor is, I wish I could pronounce his name, but he really did.
Which actor?
The guy
who plays Matan? Oh yeah, he's really good. He's Itai.
He is good.
Itai Zavolon, yeah.
Itai Zavolon was very good.
I think he's involved in a lot of theater as well. I don't know.
Probably.
He does a lot of TV series since then.
Okay, cool.
This looks to be early on for him.
This was 7 years ago.
Can I just say this one thing?
Sorry, I want to hear Seth.
When you watch Israeli films and TV, part of the enjoyment of it, because the whole country's the size of New Jersey, the theatrical and film community is incredibly small, and they like to work with each other.
It's like one ensemble, basically.
It's like everybody knows that everybody.
It's one degree of separation. Like everybody's been in a film with somebody who's been in a film with an actor
you know.
with my former roommate.
Right.
Let me just say this one thing. During that prank, they had the whole thing with the keys. So the guy with the kefa had the keys, and Matan was in the Jeep, and Matan couldn't leave because the terrorist, had the keys and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wrong. All military vehicles do not require keys. It's an ignition on near the gas pedal that you push that does the spark plug that turns on the thing. So that's one continuity error, which I think is fine. Abram left. Was he mad at me?
I'm sure there's probably just technical difficulties. But did you guys notice? Okay, so here's one thing, because I'm not so sure that I was thinking that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the sergeant, he goes by sort of two names, that he's sort of like playing this dual personality, like he changes. So I don't know if he killed somebody or just took over their personality and is pretending to rotate. But if
He
you
goes
remember
by the
when
name Stas.
okay, and then there's also another name like Adam or something.
Okay.
Right? That's the other guy's name, and that's who the computer
Adam
is.
the other. Yeah, he's the other sergeant that is supposedly the asshole sergeant.
The asshole sergeant. Okay, but if you remember when they arrived at the base, there was the two attractive ladies.
Yeah.
And they were asking for where the third was. And they said something like, oh, the sergeant asked them to do something or something like that. And then when the one guy, I think it was Matan, when he went into the bunker and found the dog head.
Yeah.
Didn't he? Or maybe it was after when the other two guys went down there and they picked up, it looked like a pink tank top.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah.
But so I was thinking, he killed the girl.
He killed the other guy. No, the girl?
No, because the girls mentioned there was somebody missing. They were going, where is she? And they said, the sergeant. So I was so it left me thinking, is this guy, is he just pretending to be two people? Though. Did she?
No. I think what happened was, they were calling her and then she came and they were saying like, they were just commenting on how the other guy, the guy that they had was an asshole. But I think he killed the other sergeant.
Yes.
But I don't think he killed.
But he did keep talking about himself in like the third person. So I was thinking he is pretending to be Adam as well as Stas or whatever his name is.
Stas, yeah.
I was a little confused.
I don't think he was pretending. I think he was just like. I think he was using his computer and he stole his stuff, and I think he murdered him.
Okay.
And I think he just referred to himself in the third person because he's a weirdo, you know.
But wouldn't like base command know that the second sergeant didn't go back to home base?
I mean, I think this is something that it just happened. It just happened.
All right.
He was they got there on the base right as this guy's kind of. He killed the dog.
Going nutty. Yeah, because
it's like he's been spiraling out of control or something.
Yeah, because the blood is still fresh in the thing. And then when they were pulling the prank on Matan got really scared, went into the bunker, which was off limits, and found the mess. Then when he came back out, he yelled at everybody, and then they turned the lights back on. And then those three jerks saw the blood on Matan. And Matan's like, I told you, things are weird. And then they get, wait, what's in Stas's room? Where's Stas? And
they thought Matan initially thought that the three of them were in on this dog skeleton.
Right. And they're like, what are you talking about, dog?
Yeah. And that's when the whole film starts to get
it's
really
if you're lying to Matan the whole time, you're just lucky Matan believed you. And I did kind of like the one where they said, Matan, you're okay. And then Matan goes off by himself and then he's talking to himself in the mirror. You know, and I forget what he was saying, but he was thinking he was cool. I thought that was really great.
Yes, that was after he told them off, and then the two guys went into the bunker. The guy, I think his name is Ron. Yeah. The guy who was sort of trying to befriend him goes up into the tower. And Roy. He's Roy. Okay.
Yeah.
And he goes in and he's proud of himself.
And he keeps on saying stuff.
He's repeating what he said and looking how it looks for him to see it. So it's that transformation moment.
He looks cool.
Yeah. In terms of the film, so I'll just give you my own review. I forgot that it was a comedy, or I didn't realize that it was a comedy. So it sort of, for me, I was like, I don't know if this is a horror comedy. It's one of those things where I feel like it's on the verge of it. And then I was wondering if this is maybe more of like an Israeli film comedy thing, that maybe I'm just not, familiar with the culture. But I was sort of like, there was some funny moments, but then for me, it just sort of then seemed kind of silly. And so I
Yeah,
was like,
silly.
I can't take the movie seriously because it's sort of like, for me, I didn't love the balance, I guess, of the horror and comedy. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what the line is or something, but there was a moment where they were battling, and I think Stas said something, and I was just like, "Oh, come on!" But it was the way that it was like presented, just
The
like
moment,
didn't totally work for me.
yeah. When he got
But
pissed at him, when he pulls the gun on him,
yes,
and he's like, "I told you to like."
I forget what it was, but I was
No,
just like,
he's like, you didn't. He's like, you didn't. You didn't put your gun together properly because
Oh,
he's
yeah.
trying to shoot him. Like,
yeah.
It's like, I never learned how to clean a gun.
yeah, exactly.
So,
No, the whole
okay,
thing
so,
was super silly.
yeah.
The whole
So
thing
the
is
whole
silly.
movie, I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on. This movie is taking forever. I'm not sure. Like I kept waiting for the horror. I was like, is this a horror movie? Like I even went and checked. I was like, I don't know, is this a horror movie? Because I feel like this is a thriller. I'm not even sure what it is. I'm really not sure about
Abram
halfway
told
through.
me it was zombies.
Yeah, I thought it
said
was zombies
zombie?
too, and I
Yes,
thought you
you-
said zombies,
you
and I was
alluded
like,
it
"There's
was
definitely
zombies.
where are the zombies?" Yeah, you
I
did
don't
say
remember.
zombies. 'Cause I
Then
was
that was
Your first pitch.
a different movie.
First pitch, or it might have been miswritten in a description that we looked up.
yeah. Maybe we were reading off of a description.
There is
that said that,
another.
but-
There is another film called Freaks Out that is about zombies. I think.
Yeah.
So that's probably
Well, for
what
the
we
record, this
mistakenly-
film has nothing to do with
nothing
zombies.
to do with zombies.
I was
And it's a
So I was kind
totally-
of disappointed
It's
with
a
that.
totally silly, like farcical film.
It is.
Yeah.
It's silly.
It's not really meant to be scary at all.
It reminded me of a movie called Wolf Creek that was based on a true story out of Australia. It had that slow build. It was more violent than scary. There was nothing supernatural, just like Freak Out. And it was like that, but Freak Out was it was funny. I was laughing aloud.
That's what, for me, like, I thought this movie was hilarious from like the jump. I thought the
The mother stuff.
I thought all the weird like hazing shit was so like, it was so accurate too. Like that is like such. I mean, I don't know.
Honestly, I would flip
It's
out.
a super freaking Israeli film. That's all I
would
say.
flip
It's very
out. Are
Israeli.
they all like that over there? Because I would flip
Every
out.
one of them is exactly like that shot. No,
I would flip out. I'd be like, and I would just flip out. Put me in Leavenworth. I'll shoot
Well,
you
I
in
mean,
the foot.
no, but like to be fair, I mean, a lot of military culture is like that.
No, there's a lot of
But
stuff.
that's.
Not
I
my
mean, you
part.
guys are wearing the same uniform.
What
If
was
I
that,
was
Seth?
Matan,
Sorry, I want to hear what Seth was saying.
I think that the strongest thing of the whole movie is the camaraderie, or lack thereof, of these guys. My camera is bouncing.
It's okay.
I was just saying that.
It's the rapport. I think the rapport.
It's the smell my farts of the three guys.
Yes,
that he's
that's
not
what I loved about this film.
involved in, and it's like guys do that, especially when they don't have any real power because they're 17, 18, 19 years old, and they're in the military on missions that really don't mean anything to them.
Yeah.
But I have another question. Like, how do you really define? This is a wide genre, horror comedy. Like, is it Evil Dead? Is it Cabin in the Woods? Is it?
Well, see, that's the beauty of it, because like I think on some level, like every horror movie, no matter how scary they try to make it, is fucking silly and stupid. Like even like the torture porn shit, like Saw and those kinds of films.
Saw 5.
But but if you think about all the horror movies from like the golden era in like the 80s, we have like whatever Freddy Krueger and all that shit. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, some of it's ridiculous.
I mean, all my favorite horror movies from when I was a kid are totally silly. I mean, I don't know. My favorite horror movie of all time is The Ice Cream Man with Clint Howard. I mean, it's
Clint.
Most people don't even know about this film. It's sort of a cult. It is a cult classic. We should probably do it.
We should do that one.
But basically, it's an ice cream guy who likes to murder people and mix them.
I do love me some Clint Howard. I do like Clint Howard. He's good. He's
Yeah.
good. Yeah,
He's got a face for horror.
he
That's for sure.
does. Yes, he does.
But
He's
I mean,
Yeah.
like
around.
horror is a silly genre, and even when
Horror,
people try to do it serious,
yeah, it's a
still
wide
silly.
umbrella too. It's one of those things where you could say this is why people whenever I tell people, "Oh, I love horror, all types of horror," and they're like, "Oh, I don't like horror," and you just rattle off like Jaws and just a couple of little
Beetlejuice.
films, and then they go,
Well, that's not really
"Oh, The
horror. I never thought
Exorcist."
it. A lot
It
of people
kind
like
of
never think
technically
of
is.
it as
It's a
horror.
monster film,
Right.
but it technically could be a horror film.
Yeah.
It's just it falls under the not. It's not gory. It's not like super edge on your seat. It's not like shocking. Depending on the person, but like so you could go from anywhere from the torture porn of Eli Roth, which some people are really into, the 80s slasher films,
Sure.
down to like The Exorcist. You say The Exorcist to people that, oh yeah, I love that film. Oh, Rosemary's Baby. Oh, I love that. Those are horror
Well,
films.
it's
It's
like
a very
yeah.
broad category.
And I think the best is when there's so many like little jokes, like inside
Yeah.
jokes going on in a horror movie. Like this
Mhm.
film was full of those, which
It
was
did.
great.
It did.
They
Yeah.
did that really well, especially like even the very end when after he kills like Stas kills all of the other soldiers, and then Matan, in self-defense ends up killing Stas and
Yeah.
then at the very end he's on a stretcher and there's like all these like medical personnel there and the guy's like, do you want to call your mom? And then he's like,
He
I
says
don't know.
no.
I think he says no, I think she would just freak out.
Yeah.
Do
No, I
you
thought it was done
credits?
well that way.
But it's like,
Yeah.
but the same thing, like it's like a punchline, like all these like Rosemary's Baby. It's just like one punchline after another until you get to the very end where she's like, yeah, you were impregnated with the devil's child,
The devil.
and
Not only that,
he's
you
like,
saw the rape
and
scene.
she's like, this is your son, and he's like, he says,
Look at his eyes.
but look at his eyes, and then he's like, he has
He
his
has
father's eyes. And he's like, but well, I forget
Yeah.
the name of the
Eyes,
character.
eyes are normal.
His eyes are normal. It's like, that's not his
Guys,
father.
guys' eyes are normal.
Guys' eyes are normal. He's like, Satan is his father.
Hail
it's
Satan.
like fucking Hail Satan. I mean, that movie
What's
is
funny?
fucking
In
hilarious.
Rosemary's Baby, they say, let Mia Farrow take care of the baby. Let her take care of it. And then she goes to the thing and like
She starts rocking it, and
okay.
it's
And then
like,
the camera pans out. Yeah, I could see how that could be funny. Where
It's
like,
hilarious. It's a hilarious ending. Yeah.
It depends on people's sense of humor, but I will say with this film is it reminded me of when I selected, I forget which episode it was, the film Rubber.
Yeah.
And the person who recommended it to me said, I watched the film and I didn't like it. I thought it was so stupid. But then like they started thinking about it and then they were like, I have to watch it again. I don't know, something about it. And then they were so mad that they actually liked the film. But I think, so I went into this film thinking, one, it was a zombie horror film. So I was completely taken back of like, this is definitely not a zombie horror film. But then I did think about the film after. So it wasn't one of those films where you just watch it and you're like, oh, that was entertaining. It really does give you some things to think about. And I think that is a well done part on the writing and the direction of the film, because they really make all the characters real. They're definitely not like one dimensional. They all have a great personality. They have their wants. They're well cast. They're well acted. Even if it's like silly, stupid lines, but it that works. Like what you guys were talking about, that rapport.
Yeah.
It works. So it does. And then at the part where, Matan, and then they even have Matan like redeem his manhood. It just, they hit all those marks, which I think does bring into the comedy, like of the writing. They hit all the points where he has like, his save the cat moment is in the beginning where he wants to pay the Arabs, they all run out and he's like, we have to pay them, right? Like he's like the good guy, right? They show you that right off the bat. And then at the end when he's about to kill Roy again, right? Because Roy's not dead, right? And he's like, and he works up his courage. Stas is going to kill Roy. He stabbed him.
Oh yeah.
He stabbed him and he's like dragging himself and Matan like runs away and he knows he's going to him and he like works up his courage and goes and attacks him. Doesn't work, but he still has that moment of like he finds his courage. I was the one part, this is so stupid, but when they were in the bunker, the two guys and the real macho guy, the dark one, I forget which guy, the guy that doesn't get the axe, the second guy, where he chokes him basically. Guy. Yeah. The better looking one.
I think that's Uzi.
Yeah. So he gets like knocked down and then choked. And I was just like, I thought he was like so tough and like that's it. I don't
Lot
know.
of
I wanted to see
attitude.
like a little bit more of a fight in that moment. I was just like,
Yeah.
wow, he really was like a little
Well,
pussy.
he was suffering from the element of surprise. and
Also,
shock.
one
Yeah.
of those big tough guys. If you pop them in the nose, big tough guys never get popped in the nose. So if you actually
Yeah.
do it, you're not supposed to punch me back. I'm supposed to scare you first or something.
Yeah.
You know. But I do
Yeah.
wonder. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I agree with you. It's one of those films. Like I actually, I watched it 4 times, and partially because I thought I thought it was like the writing and the structure was so tight,
Mhm.
and that I thought there was there the dialogue was really dense. There was a lot of like nuance packed into one movie, but it wasn't jumbled. Like everything was really cohesive. And partially, I'm also studying Hebrew and trying to get better. So if I have an opportunity to watch a movie or TV show multiple times to help me learn the language, it's like I take that opportunity. And I really enjoyed the film so much that I did watch it a bunch of times. And every time I watched it, it was like better.
Yeah.
Nice.
And the other reason is like I'm trying to understand how you can make a really tight film on a low budget. Like I really don't think they spent much money on this film at all. And Israeli government gives a lot of grants, and I know that this film was also that they definitely got some like public funding for it.
Yeah.
But and also the ability to, I think the location that they shot at, they probably got some special situation where they could do that at a pretty low cost.
Yeah,
I
and
really think this movie cost very little money to make.
Yeah.
You know,
It was one
Almost
location.
and I was
1%.
impressed by that.
Like,
Just
not
the
many extras.
yeah, there were
No.
very few people, and I mean there weren't any extras really, hardly at all. And for most of the film, it was basically like a small ensemble. And I just like any piece of artwork that somebody makes where they squeeze a lot out of. They take like as few resources as you can imagine and try to squeeze as much out of it as they can. I always really appreciate that, and I always kind of want to revisit those things and see like, well, how did they do it? You know,
Mhm.
how are they able to pull it off? And I think I was just impressed with what they were able to accomplish with a really lean budget and without a ton of special effects and
Yeah.
you know.
The other thing I wanted to mention about with it being in the horror category is there's always like the villain, it's typical
Oh
in
yeah,
any movie. There's the antagonist, and with this one, I was like, is it a person or is it the radio antenna? Because that's the other thing. Because especially nowadays, some people talk about, I don't know if it's a conspiracy theory or whatnot, but 5G, all
right.
the waves that are out there, how is it affecting people? Are people having chips put in to like turn their personality? So I feel like this movie has like a little bit of an undercurrent to it. It would be interesting to watch it again because Stas does say something like it does something to you.
Oh yeah,
And
for
he
sure.
goes over to the tower and he like puts his hand there and his hand goes Stas Matan does, he walks over and the hairs rise on him. So I was almost wondering when you go into the bunker, like, is it like radioactive? Are you gonna like transform or like turn into a zombie? Like so
Right.
there was kind of that to it. So I was kind of going, is it a person or is it like the place? So I thought that was sort of interesting because they didn't make it super obvious as to like, I don't know exactly what I'm looking for. You
Right.
know, like there wasn't a story of like, well, on some nights the werewolf comes out. It was like there isn't anything.
I think there's also this sense like in the film that everybody's just a victim of their respective circumstances.
Yeah.
That there is no real villain. It's just like this. It's the culture and the society and the circumstances that brought all these people into this screwed up environment. Like it's nobody's fault. It's just what happens sometimes when a bunch of people end up in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah. So it did have a lot of subtext to it, which I liked.
Yeah.
It had a lot of, which is why I think it left me thinking about it. And then I felt like that guy. I was like, well, do it. I think I might like the film now. Because when I first watched it, I was like, I don't know. I was expecting zombies.
Watch it again, Judy.
I probably have to. It's free for anyone who's watching later. It's currently free on Tubi if you can put up with the commercials. Otherwise, I believe it's also for purchase on Amazon Prime. And there might be some other places. Is the streaming.
If you wanna like dive deep into a bunch of like Israeli TV and film, You can download the Izzy app, which is relatively inexpensive. I think it's like $4 or $5 a month, and you can watch a lot of different stuff. And
There's a plug for Izzy.
yeah, there's a plug for Izzy.
There you go.
Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, I mean, I don't really have much more to add. I really enjoyed this, and I'm glad that you guys were patient with our first foreign language film, and that you guys were on board with this, and that's all I got. Like, I definitely
rock and roll. Matan, call me. You and I. All right, we'll get some. What do they call it?
Itai. His name is Itai. No, he's a great actor.
He was good. No, he was good. He was good.
Yeah. That was another thing. Like, I didn't mention, like, the acting was quite good.
It was. Yeah. They really knew what they were doing, or maybe they had enough time to get.
It was so natural.
They were.
It was cast well.
Yeah.
Yeah. They even looked the part too.
And that Stas character, which I was looking for, like, he does the. Like, I would want to.
He's so goofy looking.
He's so weird. I mean, in such a cool
like,
way.
Like his face. It's like with a face
like
comical, that, he becomes
really
an actor.
comical. Yeah.
Like, I just was like a guy that looks like that. He becomes an actor.
But I couldn't find him in anything else. But
no.
Maybe somebody's cousin or something. Maybe he's more of a writer. Maybe he's the writer. I don't know.
No, he wasn't the writer. But
has he been in anything else?
I couldn't find him in anything. His name is Kyle, and his name is Kyle Korabelnikov. So he actually legitimately is.
No, he doesn't even have an IMDb thing.
Yeah, he does. He was in a film in 2021 called Forgotten Nation. He was in a film in 2007 called Vazirmil. And those are the only films those are the only credits he has on IMDb. But shout out to Kyle Korabelnikov. That was
you were doing great.
Epic performance.
It really was. I couldn't get enough of it.
Anyway,
I still want to punch Uzi in the face for being such a jerk, but that's me.
What do you want to know him?
No, it's not that. Any closing comments?
I think if you get over the idea that at some point there might be werewolves, or a bunch of like ancient Muslim spirits or Jewish vampires or something, because it is a feeling like I don't know if it's because of the way it was pushed or because the way it's built up, and if you instead you just go, oh no, this is one of those movies where people are going to be like jerks to you, like during horror night at summer camp, where they tell those stories and like trying out alpha each other, then it's a really great movie. And then I also think that the actor who plays Stav, it's sort of a really hard archetypical role of the guy going crazy in a certain type of film. Whether it's like the guy in the homeless guy in the 70s horror movie is like, they're keeping him down in the sewer, like in Judd and Scammon, or like a guy who's like, the CEO of a giant corporation, and then you find out he's crazy, and like crazy is hard to do in a horror movie, because if you do it the wrong way, the genre flips into something completely different.
And you get on crutches, like what I would call a crutch. So if you got to play crazy in a certain way, because if you're just crazy, it's not interesting. Just like anger, you got to play anger and you got to mix it with something else. Otherwise, it's boring.
Like specifically, I think it's like his relationship to the radio tower is very specific and interesting.
Yeah.
To him, but I couldn't tell you what's really going on in the game that he's doing.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, I think with the going crazy is it's about dedication. Yeah, it's the same thing with anger. It can't just be like, oh, I'm angry. It's like it needs to be a focus, like a central point to it.
Or it's like anger with fear, anger with guilt, anger with shame.
That's why I think it's always good to go for the love choice, because the way you love something is always specific. So even if you're in love with a radio tower, there's the way you're in love.
It's my radio tower. Yeah, get away from my radio tower.
Differently than it talks to other people.
This radio tower is my own.
Yeah. Cronenberg does that really well with his body horror stuff. Like everyone has a different relationship specific to them with the disease, but it always seems like it's intimate and emotional.
Right.
like in the void.
Nice.
So okay, cool.
Who's next?
Yeah. What do?
Is
Yeah,
it
who's up
Is it
next?
me?
Sean? It's
I
not
think
me.
it's me.
Wait, hang on.
Sean, isn't it?
It's either Sean
Okay.
or Seth.
Yeah. So Arizona Dream was the last one Sean did. Then we did The Swimmer. Then we did High Spirits. Then we did me. Yeah. So Sean is next. Then Seth. Then Judy. So Sean, what do you?
1991's Body Parts, starring Jeff Fahey. I already made the thumbnail.
Okay, sick.
All right.
Directed by, co-written and directed by a man named Eric Red, who is, if you know your 80s, you know Eric Red. You'll
All
love
right.
it.
Where do you know where we could find it, or where viewers could find it currently?
And probably anywhere. It was made in 1991, which was a year that 3,000 movies were made in that year. There was
Wow.
an unbelievable amount of movies were made in that year. And no, I don't know, but it's
Prime Video. I'm
Okay.
looking it up right now. So
Okay.
it's available to rent on Amazon Prime. It
I'm sure it's on
is
Tubi and stuff. Or Vudu.
available. Yeah, I mean that's the only thing that comes up, but maybe it's a. Let me look. Let me do a little.
I
more
haven't
in-depth
seen the
check.
movie
Okay.
when I was a kid. My mom used to rent a lot of stuff. And I always liked Jeff Fahey. He played Lawnmower Man the next year.
Yeah,
He played,
Lawnmower Man. That's
Yeah.
where I know Jeff Fahey.
yeah, he was,
Okay.
and he played Lapidus in Lost. And I think he's a great actor. He just hasn't. But and this is one of his few leads. So
Okay.
and he plays
so-
a normal man.
It's available to rent pretty much everywhere, but it's not available to stream for free
Okay.
anywhere. So it's available to rent on Amazon, Google Play, YouTube, Vudu,
Okay.
Apple TV, Redbox, etc. And
Vudu
somewhere
pays?
between $2.99 and $3.99 to rent it.
You have to
Okay.
pay on Vudu? Weird. All right. Well, cool.
Yeah.
So Body Parts, you guys are going to like it. Seth and I are working on a story that has body horror involved, and I haven't seen Body Parts since I was a kid. And you guys can
Okay.
see how obscure it is once you get the storyline down,
Okay.
because it's something you've never seen before. And that's Eric Red. I always liked his stuff. He did a Western with Mickey Rourke. I want to watch
What do you
too.
do? What
Mm.
else do you do?
It's called The Last Outlaw. It was an HBO movie. It was like an HBO film in '96. Eric Red, he wrote The Hitcher and directed by somebody else. Eric Red,
Oh,
he
Hitcher's
co-wrote Near Dark. Eric Red and Catherine
Near Dark.
Bigelow were together. Yeah. Well, Eric Red and Catherine Bigelow were partners for a while, and then they separated. And so,
All right. And in the meanwhile, too, we'll put on Instagram and we'll put on this video when we're going to record this next one. I don't think we've set the date yet, but I want to just say for viewers, if you want to go watch the film ahead of time, and then if you have any questions or things that you want us to answer, reach out to us either through Instagram or through one of the platforms to get it to us, so that hopefully we can
And jump on our
comment on
live
it. Yeah.
chat and interact with us.
Please do. Even if you
have any
disagree with me, I welcome that, because I'm never wrong. So if somebody proves me wrong, I'm looking for the day until somebody proves me wrong. I'm looking for that day. So
like a subjective or objective thing.
both. I got the metric system.
Well, they can scroll back to Vegas. Just saying, but we still love you.
No, it's just
Instead of having a Patreon account, can we buy every copy of Vegas and just send Sean to different cities?
if you
Let's just give him a wedding cake of
I'm in
Vegas.
Seattle at the 4th of July float, selling copies of.
I'm just saying, if you buy all the copies of What Happens in Vegas, you're going to shoot up the stock. Oh, and to the viewer at home, check out my shirt. If you could guess what movie this is from, I'll send you some baseball cards. All right.
Biocarbon albuming.
All right. Yeah.
right,
Any
guys.
movie recommendations, also let us know.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
let us know your thoughts. We love loving comments and hateful comments.
Yeah.
Bring them on.
Like, dislike, whatever.
Yeah, we
I'm
we
a-
can handle it. So it's
I'm
all
a
good.
Zen Buddhist monk.
Until
I
next
only
time.
get mad at I only get mad at Abram. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
On that note.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Rock and roll.